Now, the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, recently announced that domestic flights would resume on July the 8th at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja and Murtala Mohammed Airport in Lagos. The Kano, Port Harcourt, Owerri and Maiduguri airports will reopen on July the 11th, while the other airports across the country will join on July the 15th. Now, all the 8 operating airlines say they are ready to hit the airspace from this week, but the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is not convinced that all of them are actually ready. The DG of the NCAA, Captain Musa Nuhu, will be telling us why. Good morning, Captain, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Viewers, thank you for having me on your program this morning.
With you telling us how you would rate the preparedness of the airlines to actually resume operations of domestic flights this week.
Hey, thank you very much. Once the operation started shutting down in Nigeria and the closure of the Nigerian airspace to international flights at the end of March and subsequent shutdown of the airlines, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority started compiling and making a list of items as per regulations that must be met by all service providers, including the airlines, for the resumption of flight. Subsequently, we issued several what we call all operators letters to all the airlines and issued several advisory circulars. All this listed the requirement protocols and guidelines on all functioning areas that must be met by all service providers, including the airlines, for approval to resume operations. As regards to airlines, there are 2 main areas. We have the safety technical issues, and these have to do with matters such as the airworthiness of aircrafts. Aircrafts having been grounded for about 3 months or thereabout needed to be checked to be sure they're airworthy. As regards this, we had issued what we call the storage maintenance guidelines, in which aircrafts are properly stored and maintained, and having maintenance being done on them at regular intervals to ensure their airworthiness for when the operations resume. And we had other issues at pilot recency and the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the premier regulatory body of aviation in the world, and a body of the United Nations, issued guidelines on this matter, which we are adopting these guidelines to ensure all pilots are current, efficient, and proficient. And airlines, we are required to issue their guidelines on this. Once they did this, risk assessments have been done on each band by each airline to ensure that all risks are eliminated or mitigated to the lowest possible minimum acceptable levels. We had other areas like aviation security, safety management, and others that we had to implement. Then the COVID-19 is responsible for this, and we have what you call the public health corridor, which entails having clean airports, clean passengers, clean workers, clean aircraft, and clean flight crew, and clean baggage. This is to ensure that all risk pertaining to the spread of the coronavirus are eliminated, or in the least reduced to barest minimum possible levels. And these include checks before you get into the airport, checks for symptoms of COVID-19, such as temperature, coughing, cold, and others. So basically, on the issue of the airlines have done significantly well. There are most of them, quite a few, some have already met the requirements as set by the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, which is the regulatory body of the industry in Nigeria, and some are likely to meet that today. So overall, I think the airlines both have done pretty well meeting our requirements, which international standards. There's only one aviation which is global and as directed by standard and recommended practices of the International Civil Aviation Organization.
Haven't talked about the preparedness of the airlines now. What about the passengers who are apprehensive about safety on one hand and the COVID-19 infection on the other? What would you say to them?
Well, I can guarantee and I'll assure, well, I rather use the word, I'll assure all passengers all measures have been taken by the Civil Aviation Authority on the issue of the technical safety of flights, and in conjunction with the health authorities, including the Pulse Health Services, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, Federal Ministry of Health, and World Health Organization, to ensure that we put measures that would minimize or eliminate the possibility of contracting the coronavirus while you're within the air transport system flying from point A to B. And I want to assure all the traveling public that the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority will not authorize any operator, whether an airline or the airports, including the air navigation service providers, which is Nigerian Airspace Management Authority, and all ground handlers, the airlines will not be authorized to resume operation until they meet these requirements and we confirm such to be true before they are authorized to resume operations. That's a guarantee I can give the travel public. Will ensure all this. I'm sure we will not sacrifice safety, both technical and health-wise, for any financial consideration. That is absolutely not even an option for us in the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, and also with the Federal Ministry of Aviation.
Another concern of the passengers is the fact that most airlines are set to be contemplating increasing fares by as much as 50% to defray the cost of social distancing and reduce load factors. Would you say this is fair in view of the new price of petrol, the exchange rate adjustment, and the impact on weary Nigerian consumers?
Okay, on the issue of the physical spacing of the aircraft, we're still in discussion. That will be resolved tonight. By the end of the day, we'll come out with a specific position. As I mentioned earlier, the International Civil Aviation Organization, the premier aviation regulatory body in the world, has issued a CAT report. The CAT report is Council Aviation Recovery Task Force, and it dealt exclusively with the issue of physical space in the aircraft. This report was set up or was released by a KIO committee, which comprised of the World Health Organization, the World Tourism Board, International Air Transport Authority, IATA, Airport Councils International, ACI, to come up with this report. And the report on the physical spacing stated as follows: in case where physical spacing is not feasible, such as in the cabin of an aircraft, mitigating measures shall be put in place. What are these mitigating measures? Things like the wearing of masks, which we require is mandatory for all passengers, the use of hand sanitizers to clean the hands, and the airlines are expected after each flight to go in and clean all the commonly used areas in the aircraft, such as seat armrests, the tray, the doorknobs, the toilets, and others. So all these are to mitigate. And also the report goes ahead and says, when possible, if space available in the aircraft, the airline might decide to do physical distancing. However, despite this report, different countries and different airlines, even within the United States, different airlines have different regulations. But what we are trying to do in Nigeria, and the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, in consultation with the health authorities in Nigeria, we want to come up with a single standard for all the Nigerian airlines. So for now, I cannot definitely say what the capacity will be. Obviously, airlines, businesses, they're in there to make money, but will ensure they comply with all health and technical protocols to ensure the safety of the traveling public.
You're saying that we're not likely to see an increase in the price of airfares?
I cannot say that for definite. I cannot say that, but we know to increase in airfares, the Civil Aviation Authority must be informed, and the airlines need to give us reasons before we approve that.
Now, the federal government is supporting the aviation industry with 27 billion naira, and this is part of the Economic Sustainability Plan stimulus package. But when we compare this to countries like Senegal, Kenya, South Africa, and even Rwanda, it looks like the amounts may be slightly inadequate and suboptimal. So how much more should Nigeria be adding to this stimulus in view of the critical nature of aviation to the economy?
Well, I can't tell you how much more needs to be added, but all I know, this is a policy matter been handled by the Honorable Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika. I know he's made quite a few number of consultations at the Federal Executive Council. He's made the presentation to the Economic Recovery Team headed by His Excellency, the Vice President. He's consulted with the Honorable Minister of Finance and also the Central Bank Governor. So efforts have been made to ensure that adequate support is given to the entire industry. And when I say entire industry, it's not only the airlines, it's the whole value chain of the industry, the airports, the people that work in the airport, the taxi drivers, and all others. And not to forget, including the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority also, because about 90% of our revenue comes from airlines flying. So without the airlines flying, we've lost of our revenue over the last several months. So efforts are being made to get increase the amount of grant by the government and the various government MDAs, and also there have been consultation with the Central Bank Governor on the provision of single-digit long-term loans to the various sectors of the aviation industry to assist them survive. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be quite a considerable amount of economic package coming to the entire industry.
Well, Captain, one of the things that the authorities are saying now is that under the new protocol, passengers for domestic flights are to arrive 3 hours before departure and international passengers 5 hours before. Of course, many are complaining that for a 1 hour flight, that waiting time is an incentive killer for an industry that needs to boost demand for its services after 4 months of downtime. Is this long waiting time justified? Well,
I understand the concerns and worries of the passengers going to the airport 3 hours before 1 hour flight. It's justified, but what the public needs to know, we are now implementing a lot of new measures that the industry has not implemented for. Most of them have to do with the public health corridor protocols and issue of social distancing. You need to be checked for COVID-19 symptoms before you even allowed to enter the airport terminal. You need to have your mask. And now, if you look at the social distancing in the airport, if you implement the social distances within the airport, you effectively reduce the capacity of the airport terminals. So we need to ensure that we don't have the crowd in the airport does not exceed the capacity of the airport, considering the requirement for social distancing. This 3 hours is just for the start. We have a lot of things not implemented before, we're not used to. I'm sure with time, when we get used to it, we're going to see gaps or areas in the system where we can tweak and reduce the waiting time for the passengers. So I don't presume this 3 hours is going to stay for long. As we get more experience with these processes in the airport and then following the health protocols, I'm sure the time will go down with some time. So I plead with the traveling public to bear with us. What we're doing is for their own safety, health-wise, security-wise, and safety-wise. So we'll have to ensure we do the proper things. We cannot afford, and we must not afford, and will not afford anything that will make aviation a vector for the spread of the COVID-19 virus. To do otherwise is negligence of our duties and responsibilities. So the public should bear with us. It is for their own good and safety.
Talking about safety now, Captain, the pilots have been grounded since March, and most of the aircraft have also been in that same situation. So tell us what steps the NCAA is taking to ensure that the requirements for safe flight are maintained, especially as we are in the peak of the rainy season and bad weather.
Okay, in the very beginning when I started, I dealt with that issue, but I'll quickly rehash over it. The International Civil Aviation Organization formed a committee called the Council of Aviation Recovery Task Force, which came out with guidelines covering these areas, issues with the airworthiness of the aircraft and pilot proficiency and recency requirements. And these guidelines, we're implementing them. Even before the International Aviation Organization came out with a report, we had developed our own report, which we cross-checked with the International Civil Aviation Organization, with the African Civil Aviation Commission, and it came up with little or no comments. So that means we've done a pretty good job. In fact, when the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, started its CAT committee, we sent our documents to consider as part of the reference materials for the committee. As regards to the airworthiness of the aircraft, after being on the ground for quite a few months, at the very beginning, when the industry shut down, we sent an all-operators letter to the airlines, advising them to follow their original manufacturer's recommendation for the storage maintenance of the aircraft. And these aircrafts are properly stored to ensure that nothing happens to them, and they're being maintained at a regular period. So for this, for our own restart plan, we've sent a checklist to the airlines. The airlines will follow the checklist and send the report to the Civil Aviation Authority, at which point our own inspectors will go to the airlines, check the aircraft, check their records to ensure that the checklist they return with us and contain the information are valid and true. So basically, what is happening is that Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority will not, and I say again, will not authorize any airline to resume operations if they do not comply with these guidelines. And in addition to the pilots being on ground, I mentioned about the issue of pilot recency and pilot recurrency. The International Civil Aviation CAT also came up with guidelines, which we had done before them, and guidelines are almost basically the same, just a few changes here and there. And they came up with alternative means of meeting this pilot recurrency and proficiency standards. We sent, in addition to the airworthiness, we sent also on the pilots, we did send a checklist and guidelines for the airlines to follow. And the airlines were supposed to give us their own alternative plans to meet with this pilot recency and proficiency requirements, at which they'll develop risk mitigating measures. They send this checklist with this report to the Civil Aviation Authority. The appropriate department will go through this and cross-check and confirm and check with the airlines. And also, we will also conduct a risk assessment on these plans submitted by the airlines. If we are not satisfied with it, we'll return it to the airlines with our own comments for them to adjust their program. So far, it's been reasonable. Quite a number of airlines have met both the requirements of the safe aircraft and in airworthiness condition and the proficiency levels of the pilots. And I'll say again, and I'll keep saying again, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority will not authorize or will not accept any airline to resume operations until they in 100% compliance with the requirements the Civil Aviation Authority has given them. I can assure the traveling public we are doing our very best to ensure their safety.
I'd like to thank you, the Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu, for joining us on Business Morning.
Thank you very much, and appreciate you having me here this morning.
All right, Captain.